Hey guys, Jeff Train here. I'm with M-Dubs, and today we will be talking about Richard Feynman. He's a great guy. You should probably get to know him, and let's just start right now. Okay, so Richard the Feynman. Let's start by just talking about who he was. So Richard Feynman was born in New York, right here, on May 11th, 1918, to Polish and Russian immigrant parents. Feynman was exceptionally intelligent, even at a young age, having learned calculus by the time he was 15. I barely even know calculus right now, so that's saying something. He is known for his contributions to quantum physics, quantum electrodynamics, and particle physics. In 1998, he died at the age of 69 years from abdominal cancer in Los Angeles.
All right, so Feynman received his undergraduate degree in physics from MIT in 1939. For his undergraduate thesis, Feynman developed a method for calculating forces within molecules. He earned his PhD from Princeton University in 1942, and his PhD thesis discussed a new model for quantum mechanics based off the probabilities of paths a particle could take.
Okay, so now let's move on to his career. He did a lot. So during World War II, he played a vital role in the Manhattan Project in Los Alamos. He developed a formula to predict the explosive yield of atomic bombs, and he was the first person to kind of introduce using like primitive computers to just do some of the calculations. After the war, he became a professor of theoretical physics, first at Cornell and then at Caltech. Feynman was also eventually, much later on, part of the investigative committee examining the Challenger disaster, and he found that part of the reason why the Challenger blew up was because the shuttle's O-rings, which were supposed to kind of seal in the heat, didn't work at the low temperatures that outer space was at. And Feynman, he was a bit of an iconoclast. He constantly challenged procedure during his investigations of the Challenger disaster, and he investigated engineers independently, and he was constantly independently inspecting equipment, and he often got into a lot of trouble because of that. And he also suffered from various forms of cancer beyond abdominal cancer, and that really got in the way of his life and ended up killing him.
All right, so Richard Feynman devised a mathematical theory which had to do with the phenomenon of superfluidity, which is a state that happens at temperatures near absolute zero, where a substance's viscosity becomes zero in liquid helium. Since he was able to resolve problems related to the theory of quantum electrodynamics, he was granted the 1965 Nobel Prize of Physics alongside Julian Schwinger and Tomonaga Shinichiro. Critical to understanding quantum electrodynamics were Feynman diagrams, which were used to illustrate interactions between subatomic fermions, which are matter particles, and bosons, which are energy or field particles. He was one of the key figures in the development of quark theory, since he presented his proton model of high energy proton collision processes. And in 1972, Richard Feynman was awarded the Oersted Medal for teaching.
All right, so let's talk about some of the books that Feynman published. So the first book that we're going to talk about is The Character of Physical Law, and he explores several of the laws of physics, and then he finds that they're all just incredibly elegant and beautiful, and this is a common theme. Feynman thought of science as just a wonderful thing that he could explore, and he constantly brought this up in a lot of his books. And he published another book called QED, The Strange Theory of Light and Matter, which is talking about basically what he covered in his lectures on quantum electrodynamics, which was what QED stands for. He also published the Feynman lectures, which is 3 separate volumes, and they're just compilations of Feynman notes from when he taught introductory physics at Caltech. So some people still use these today, and they contain stuff on various different fields of physics, including quantum mechanics, which he covered. And finally, something more personal, more autobiographical in nature. Surely you're joking, Mr. Feynman. Adventures of a Curious Character, which he also had a sequel to, which we will not name. So it was just he described a bunch of experiences he had in his life, which we'll see later. He was a very interesting character, to say the least.
All right, so Hans Beth was manager of Feynman's division of the Manhattan Project and remained close to him while Feynman taught at Cornell. Feynman collaborated with Murray Gell-Mann when studying weak interactions like beta decay. They were close friends and rivals. John Wheeler and Richard Feynman devised the Wheeler-Feynman absorber theory, which had to do with electromagnetic field equations.
All right, so let's talk about some fun facts. So Richard Feynman had a van depicting several examples of Feynman diagrams, and it's still around today, and it was actually relatively recently restored in 2014. You can see it on the right over there. It's kind of old-fashioned, but he's been a while since he's dead, so let's not talk about that. Feynman played the bongo drums, which he mentioned in the book that we discussed earlier, which was, well, it's the bongo drums. And while working on the Manhattan Project, Feynman and his wife cut their letters up into jigsaw puzzles before they sent them to each other. It was a massive pain for the other people who were sending mail back and forth. And, oh boy, they got annoyed at Feynman for that.
So to sum it up, Feynman was a pioneer of computer technology for the Manhattan Project, and he used those computers to solve necessary yield formulas. Feynman also developed models for many physical phenomena, such as superfluidity. He served as a professor at Caltech for several years and developed lectures that would become adapted into books still used today. He received a Nobel Prize for his development of quantum electrodynamics and created diagrams useful in understanding such a theory. He also uncovered flaws in NASA's testing protocols through his discovery of the O-rings failure.
Well, that's pretty much a wrap on our presentation on Richard Feynman. Here are the review questions, and have a nice day, guys.